Because the debate about Islam is so plagued by people pushing their own agendas, many moderate and reasonable people are unwilling to participate, fearing they might be associated with such people. But this, of course, only allows these people to monopolize the debate and spread biased and distorted information without it being countered. This in turn means that many otherwise very reasonable and fair-minded people are taken in by such distorted and selective information. Two examples are the issues of Taqiyya, which is presented as a key Islamic doctrine of lying to non-Muslims, and abrogation, which is presented as meaning that the violent verses abrogate all the peaceful ones. As for Taqiyya, it was a concept developed amongst the minority Shia Muslims to protect themselves against the persecution of the Sunni majority. It was in fact a perfectly reasonable and understandable defense mechanism to preserve their lives and faith under Sunni authorities, which at various times in history suppressed and persecuted them. Taqiyya is not a key concept of Islam, and most Muslims have never heard of it. And Muslims are not taught to lie to non-Muslims. I was born Muslim and was very devout for many years. I studied Islam deeply and was a teacher at an Islamic school. During all my years, I only heard the word Taqiyya a couple of times. Ironically, I've heard much more about it from non-Muslims since leaving Islam than I ever did as a Muslim. We recently carried out a poll about Taqiyya on the Council of Ex-Muslims Internet Forum. 74% said they hadn't even heard of it when they were a Muslim. The rest, who had heard of it, understood it to mean simply protecting oneself in life-threatening situations. The only sinister thing about this is why anyone would want to present it as something evil. Of course, there may be Muslim speakers who indulge in doublespeak and shifting goalposts, but this is not something peculiar to Muslims. Many people do this, especially those who have to defend irrational beliefs against reason and logic. To portray Muslims as being uniquely lying, deceptive or treacherous is to dehumanize them, something that those who want to justify acts of violence are very keen to do. As for the doctrine of abrogation, this is something that was largely constructed by Islamic scholars after Muhammad died. It is a minefield of varying and contradictory views. There are 3 verses from the Quran where the doctrine is drawn from, but Muslims have never been in complete agreement about what they mean. Scholars in the Middle Ages began trying to identify and list what verse abrogates what, but few of them agreed on the verses, partly because many verses cannot be dated precisely, and partly because a later verse may contradict an earlier one, but then a later one than that may confirm the earlier one. Nor is it true that all the harsh verses fall into the Medinan period, while the tolerant ones fall into the Meccan period. There are instances of the opposite being the case. Even in early times, there were scholars who rejected the idea that some verses of the Quran abrogated other verses of the Quran. They argued that the 3 verses in the Quran that refer to abrogation simply mean that some verses were superseded in Muhammad's own lifetime and so were never written into the final Quran. Today, this view is very widespread, and many Muslims reject the whole idea of abrogation completely. To put it simply, it is ignorant and misleading to simply claim that Muslims believe peaceful verses are abrogated by violent ones.